BBC is spiraling out of control, and now more than ever, it is being exposed and called out for its wrongdoings and negative actions. For decades, the BBC has been in trouble, but only recently have people truly started to wake up to just how deeply flawed this organization is. With the recent scandal involving Hugh Edwards, followed by their ongoing dissemination of propaganda, misinformation, and bias, it's time to dive into why the BBC has once again come under scrutiny and why they are rapidly losing control. But before we dig deeper into the details of this story, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to our growing community of truth seekers. We are determined to shine a light on the stories that the mainstream media, particularly the BBC, refuses to address. Let's get right into it. The BBC has been called out in recent weeks for its heavily biased reporting on the situation involving Israel, Palestine, and Iran. It is clear to many observers that their reporting is skewed and that they seem to be pushing a specific narrative. Take, for instance, two recent images that have gone viral. In one of them, the BBC live-streamed a speech by Ayatollah Khamenei for a full 40 minutes. During this broadcast, the BBC displayed a banner quoting Khamenei as saying that the missile attack on Israel on October 7th was logical and legitimate. This kind of content, in my opinion, is nothing short of spreading terrorist propaganda to the UK public, a public that is forced to fund the BBC through license fees. The fact that this is happening on a publicly funded channel makes it all the more concerning. But this isn't the only recent example of the BBC's bias. Let's take a look at a detailed thread from an award-winning journalist, David Kerr, who has been calling out the BBC for their propaganda and misinformation. He started by saying, "Exclusive. Yesterday, the BBC's flagship program, BBC Verify, blatantly published pro-Iranian propaganda. BBC Verify is not a legitimate verification tool. It is a propaganda device that is driven by unacceptable bias, publishing blatant lies that remind us of Russian, Soviet-era disinformation services." To support his claims, Kerr points to a 1-minute and 20-second video published by BBC Verify, titled "Where Iran's Missiles Struck in Israel." According to the BBC, this video was created to counter false imagery circulating online. In the video, they claim to have verified missile strikes near 3 key locations, all of them military sites. This immediately raises a question. Why did they only verify these 3 locations? For example, a confirmed missile strike on the Argan shopping mall was left out of their analysis entirely. It is difficult to believe that this was an oversight. Instead, it seems likely that BBC Verify was intentionally promoting a pro-Iranian narrative by implying that the missiles targeted only military installations and not civilian areas. The situation gets even more troubling when Kerr examines the BBC's reporting on an attack on the Teln Air Base. According to the BBC, the missile did not strike the airbase directly, but rather landed in a nearby school located several miles away. This begs the question, how does BBC Verify know that the airbase was the intended target and not the school? The school was 5 miles away from the airbase, and they are 2 entirely different locations. BBC Verify presents this as fact, but it simply doesn't hold up under scrutiny. To put it into perspective, imagine that a missile strikes a school in Jabalia, a refugee camp in Gaza, 5 miles away from a Hamas military installation. If the BBC were reporting on this, would they claim that the missile hit a Hamas military target instead of the school? Of course, they wouldn't. They would rightly call that disinformation. Yet in this instance, the BBC is bending over backward to present a narrative that seems to favor Iran and downplay the fact that civilians were targeted. The journalist responsible for this analysis is Nal Al-Mafi, a Yemeni-born reporter. Earlier in her career, she worked with Al Jazeera, Middle East Eye, and even Press TV, a known mouthpiece for the Iranian government. A quick look at her social media reveals that she has shared Free Palestine hashtags and posted images supporting the pro-Iranian group Noor Carter. Is this the kind of impartial and unbiased journalism that the BBC claims to uphold? I think not. This raises the larger question, who still watches the BBC? In the comments below, let me know if you still trust the BBC as a reliable news source. Yes or no? Now let's turn to another major story making headlines this week. The United States has conducted airstrikes on 15 targets in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen in response to intensified attacks on vessels in the Red Sea. According to officials from U.S. Central Command, these strikes were carried out to protect freedom of navigation and to make international waters safer for all ships. This comes after an oil tanker was set ablaze by a Houthi-initiated missile strike on Tuesday. U.S. military aircraft and warships targeted Houthi strongholds at around 5 different locations, according to reports from local media. 7 of these strikes hit the Hudaida airport and the Cab military base, while 4 more were directed at sites in Sana'a, including the capital. Additionally, 2 airstrikes targeted the Damar province. Residents in the region have reported that one of these attacks in Al-Baida province specifically targeted several Houthi military outposts. The Houthis have been responsible for nearly 100 attacks on ships traveling through the Red Sea since November. They claim that these attacks are acts of solidarity with the Palestinian cause amid the ongoing war in Gaza. The Houthis have sunk 2 vessels, seized another, and killed at least 4 seafarers. In response, U.S. Central Command released a statement saying that their forces had targeted 15 Houthi sites in Iranian-backed Houthi areas of Yemen. These strikes occurred at around 5 p.m. Sana'a time and focused on Houthi offensive military capabilities. These actions, according to the statement, were taken to ensure freedom of navigation and the safety of U.S., coalition, and merchant vessels traveling through the area. The Biden administration has been primarily defensive in its responses to Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. However, these recent airstrikes mark a significant escalation in efforts to neutralize the threat posed by the Houthis. Switching to another story, in Lebanon, protesters took to the streets earlier today in Beirut to honor the late Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah. The rally attracted thousands of people and served as a show of support for Hezbollah's ongoing resistance against Israel. In more lighthearted news, Princess Kate has made her first public statement following her return to royal duties. The Princess of Wales took to social media to congratulate Sir Ben Ainslie and the Ineos Britannia team on their qualification for the 37th America's Cup. Congratulations to the entire Ineos Britannia team on an incredible display of teamwork, skill, and determination. Best of luck in the final challenge, Kate wrote in her statement. This marks the first time in over 60 years that a British team has made it this far in the America's Cup competition. Sir Ben Ainslie, who won his 4th gold medal during the London 2012 Olympics, has a long history of working with Princess Kate. The two first teamed up in 2014 to launch the UK's bid for the America's Cup. In 2016, Kate even took to the water herself, participating in a sailing event in Portsmouth alongside Ainslie as part of her work with the 1851 Trust. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been vocal supporters of Ainslie's efforts to bring the America's Cup back to Britain,